Vinay in further analysis and interpretation of the report in the current business climate. Given that today an organization's business strategy and technology strategy are no longer separate entities, and the technology decision of today are critical to sustaining a long-lasting competitive edge in the future, I would like to invite a technology leader and an HR leader, along with Vinay, to discuss workplace learning trends. Since the report revealed 9 in 10 executives and managers say their organizations either face skill gaps already or expect them to develop in next 5 years, it will be insightful to know what leaders are planning. Please join me in welcoming Madhu Ratnaike, CIO Virtusa, and Pramat Nath, CHRO India and APAC GE Steam Power, along with Vinay Pradhan, Country Head India and South Asia, Udemy Business, for a fireside chat.
Nice.
Thank you, Pooja, for the introductions, and absolutely delighted to have you with us, Pramat and Madhu, for this fireside chat. It's actually something which is very close to our heart when we talk about getting two leaders from different backgrounds and different functions and roles as such when we are talking about learning, right, and skill development in organizations. From the report that we shared a little while back on the global learning trends and how they also correlate with the great resignation that is here upon us, a few things that have stood out, and most of the conversation that we will have, audience, with the two gentlemen who are here with us, is going to focus on some of those key points that have emerged there. And I would like to kick off first with Madhu and essentially that piece which also has emerged over the pandemic and where we are right now, business or enterprise community as such, which is around saying, hey, the paradigm has shifted, hybrid work, remote, about innovation, improve productivity with the kind of new way of working and of course increased digitalization that is upon us. One piece that always comes up and which is about saying organizations need to innovate continuously because of the fact that it's a dynamic environment that we are a part of today. And when we talk about innovation, whether that should be certain, I know you're a big proponent of innovation in organizations there. What skills should organizations really build to unleash enterprise-wide innovation so that it's not dependent or restricted?
One of the fundamental things, as you said, is the rate of innovation. I think if you think about, we are on an exponential curve, we are kind of taking that turn now, right? So everything is doubling at half the time it used to take before, right? And so that's why we see some of the things that we thought of like science fiction 5 years ago, like going to space and, autonomous cars to drones and things like that, AI and, few of these things that we think science fiction 5 years ago is today's real, right? So, and that rate will only increase. As a result, obviously, all organizations has a need to keep up with that pace, as well as really take advantage of that thing. And you are really building on the things that has been done before at a much, much higher rate. So if you're coming back to your question about innovation, I think one of the fundamental things is that innovation happens at the periphery of the organization, or periphery of where really your customer and your teams interact, right? And I think whether it's a digital or physical, that periphery is where I think which is ripe for innovation, right? So is no longer in the middle core R&D team doing something. That will continue to happen as well. But the real customer-centric innovation will happen at the periphery. So if you look at that, I think that your two skills I feel is very important. Is one is empathy, right? Being able to really understand your customer's perspective, your stakeholders' perspective, and being able to get into somebody's shoes to be able to see the world from their light, to be able to innovate. Second is really curiosity, right? How do you really be more open-minded, have a beginner's mind always, so that you really see the dots and connect them and really create new opportunities for your organization. So those two, I would say, are the really critical for as we accelerate innovation. Empathy and curiosity are, I would say, two fundamental things that people should have to be able to be part of this very exciting phase that we are in most companies.
Awesome. Empathy and curiosity to actually drive and build that culture of innovation. Thanks, Madhu. I think that also ties in with what we have seen in the trends there on power skills, and these two also sort of fit in there very clearly, and possibly two critical skills for people to have, especially when they are, like you said, at the periphery, interfacing with customers. Moving on to Pramath. Pramath, the opening question for you, and one piece was innovation, which we spoke to Madhu about. The other is also when we are talking about being agile and being an organization that is possibly staying ahead of the curve when it comes to responding to the changes in the business or the environment outside. The importance of really understanding what kind of skill gaps that exist, or even looking at creating, some people call it a talent inventory or a skill inventory in the organization. Of course, how dynamic it can be and can respond to those changes. But having that, people say that is now a business imperative. Do you agree with that statement? And what do you think you are doing in your organization which sort of tries to address this piece?
So I certainly agree with that statement. I also would like to start from where Madhu mentioned. He mentioned about innovation. And technology innovation has been regularly disrupting business models. We have seen that for a while. But the pandemic has fast forwarded that disruption. And if I share the World Economic Forum's Future of Jobs report, which most of the HR professionals are extremely fond of year after year, this double disruption will compel half of the world's manpower to be reskilled by 2025. And again, to Madhu's point of AI automation, machine learning, those are pushing us in our roles as employees out of our comfort zones. And that's being done to remain relevant in our jobs till the time we superannuate or want to be employable. Coming to the organization. So for any organization to be future ready, it's critical to think ahead and plan today in anticipation of the future so that the organization can sustain and thrive in the changed world. Organizations which have embedded a learning culture in their DNA would gain advantage, because it's not only the organization's responsibility, but also the responsibility of each one of us as employees to keep our learning agility high. Now, talent gap analysis is a prerequisite for preparing the workforce of the future. And anticipating the future skills, mapping skill inventory, evaluating the gap between the present skills and competencies of the future, and finally implementing interventions to bridge that gap are key steps which we all know leads us in our journey to upskill our workforce to be role ready. Now, it is indeed a business imperative, and that's a response to your question, because to optimize cost, to retain knowledge internally, to innovate, and also inculcate a sense of belongingness in the workforce, the cycle of talent gap analysis, interventions to bridge those gaps, and eventually meeting the customer needs are absolute business imperatives. Let me come to the final point, which is the technical skills and power skills, as you say. like collaboration, learning agility, empathy was mentioned by Madhu, curiosity was mentioned, emotional intelligence, etc. Both these are needed to perform our jobs effectively. Businesses might suffer if the workforce is ill-equipped, technically or behaviorally. And in order to be ahead of the curve, we all need to. In GE's Team Power India, we are in the process of transforming our business while adapting to the market changes in the power sector. Mm-hmm. What does it mean? It means building an agile workforce, role ready to meet customer needs. We brainstormed initially about 8 months ago with our business leaders and identified focus areas, which are our priorities for the near future. And this helped us select the jobs or roles that are needed to be either upskilled or reskilled. And accordingly, we carried out the competency mapping exercise for the target population, then prepared a skill inventory of the current skills, then mapped the gaps and devised interventions on the job or otherwise to enable the workforce bridge that gap and be role ready. And I have data over the last 8 months which says that 30% of the roles filled internally, the alumni came out of the upskilling program.
Fantastic. That's awesome. And of course, GE is known for innovative practices when it comes to learning, Pramath. And I think this actually demonstrates that fact. And I think when we're talking about the Great Resignation as well, providing those opportunities for people. So while the skill inventory tells you where you are and where people are, providing that opportunity to people to acquire those skills and succeed and maybe get that opportunity within the organization from a career development point of view as well. That's fantastic. Just a segue into another piece, and Pramath, you talked about technical skills. The report this year is showing a trend which says that technical skills are no longer restricted to only folks who are in technical roles as such. We are finding that people who are in so-called non-technical roles seem to be gravitating towards acquiring new skills in the technical area and also going in for some certifications in those areas as such. Now, if you really look at professionals in today's world and really preparing for the future as such, Madhu, in a nutshell, if you had to put it from a technical point of view, what are those skills, the core tech skills that professionals should focus on to keep pace with these changes and the increasing sort of digitalization of organizations and business? Coming from your perspective, what's your advice?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question. I want to kind of broad base it for you, since we're talking about, more broader audience of people, right? And I think I'm not sure whether we call this technical, but I think these are getting more systematic, right? So, there are 3 areas I would like to highlight. The first one is your thinking skills, right? And ability to really, and do this more systematically. Things like design thinking and the likes, that you can really learn how to drive your thinking process, right? So you get better ideas, better outcomes from groups of people, right? So thinking, design thinking type of skills is, I think, very crucial to be able to really, be in tune. The second, as Prashant said, really the learning skills, right? And I think, as we all know, it's everywhere. And then I think the report highlights it quite amply, that, ability to learn is probably one of the most fundamental skills now, given the things, the rate of change that we see in the marketplace. So I would say that's the kind of second thing. The third area I would say is really, especially driven by, now accelerated by COVID, how do you connect or network or lead in a more digital setup, right? And what I would like to call, you're going from a hierarchy to a hierarchy, right? You're really now connected more in, more like a network as opposed to a hierarchy, right? And that requires very different skills in the way you connect with people, the way you build relationship with people, especially when you're not there. It creates challenges as well as significant opportunities, right? If you think about it today, distance between any 2 people in the world has become equal, right? It's a Zoom call or a Teams call away, right? Whereas earlier, wherever you are in the office or your geography plays a big role, right? And I think what we see with pandemic, and I think this is here to stay, that geography will become less important when it comes to work. And also the networking skills or digital networking skill, right? How do you work like a network becomes, I think, the third, cornerstone skill, I would say, that you really need to have for any profession. I think these are, I would like to call more like the keystone skills, right? These are fundamental to every other skill. So, thinking, your learning and networking, right? Those are three, I would say, very crucial for professionals.
Awesome. Keystone skills. I like that term, Madhu. I think that sort of encapsulates why these skills are critical there. Thanks for actually sharing that. A quick one there, Pramath, and I think maybe this is a very obvious question, but obviously when it comes to learning, there is this entire challenge that a lot of people face about saying, hey, how do you align learning to business outcomes? And quick question from an HR perspective. How essential is it for HR to collaborate with the functional leaders to really design the organization's learning strategy to ensure that the alignment is there and we are talking about business outcomes from learning rather than learning working in isolation?
So organizations run today on the engine of collaboration. Teams are spread across the globe, and at times they work on different pieces of the final product or the final service. If HR or functional heads work in their silos, then the key objectives of the organization will be jeopardized. So here, joint ownership, co-creation is extremely important. Whatever you do, you co-create solutions, because once you co-create, you take part of the ownership for its eventual success. And therefore, HR strategy needs to be intertwined with the business strategy. Now, sounds very cliche, but the truth is that HR cannot have an agenda of its own. And particularly, HR cannot have an agenda of its own which is different than that of the business. It cannot run parallel. It has to be intertwined. And in order to draw synergy, HR needs to work with the functional heads and augment the efforts to meet organizational needs. Because every functional head will have their own set of priorities. And there is a certain priority on the people quadrant which HR needs to then partner with them. So how it should work, or it ideally works, is at times the functional heads are the pilots and HR is the co-pilot. And at times HR is the pilot and the functional heads are co-pilot. And then the twain work towards the success of the organization. That's how you collaborate.
Brilliant. Like that. The analogy, the plane analogy there, I think the aeroplane analogy sort of says it all. Fantastic conversation till now, Pramath and Madhu. I think one question, and that's the final question that I'm going to pose here, and I'm sure the audience here also has that in their minds. The elephant in the room, the Great Resignation. How would you look at, and people say that organizations need to invest in overall 360 development of their people and not just siloed skills as such. 2 minutes each as we conclude. What are your thoughts on that?
Pramod, do you want to go first?
Okay, sure. So the organization's job is to be facilitator. As an employee, it is my life, my priority. And in case if I identify my area of development and the organization has a platform to offer me where I can really test out my current skills and build on it, nothing like it. Okay, that's one part. The second part is holistic development. Absolutely. 360, I don't know what aspect of 360, but then whether it's technical or power skills or the skills that we have been thinking about, skills of the future, the organization should restrict itself to offering a platform. Now, the platform can be a platform of empathy, as Madhu said. And then you draw out policies such as wellness policy, employee well-being. You stretch it to their families. And the pandemic has proved that we still are empathetic as human beings. And the short and nasty part of the human nature doesn't come at play at all times. So you focus on wellness of each other. And there also You ensure that you protect one another properly in times of need.
Yeah, I think, I would add to that, Pramad, I think what had happened in the last 2 years, where, everybody is staying home and really working in a very different context, right? I think people have realized probably what is more important for them and what are the priorities of life. And work, work is, part of that equation, right? And I think that shift in priorities, whether it's family or whether it's your health, and all of a sudden those things become really right in your face for a lot of people, right? And it happened at the same time, and that's driving the whole great resignation or great reshuffle, as they call, right? And it's really about then people finding places and organizations that they can be flexible, they can bring their full selves and part of that. So I think the work, we've been this whole topic of work-life balance, all that stuff has got a kind of new meaning now, right? It's again got, from to your point earlier, it got accelerated, right? It really, work life has earlier been just, creating a bit of more time to you do other things. Now it's a lot more intertwined, right? And I think, it's more like not working from home. It's like living at work, right? You're really now spending more of your time. And so it's very important then you create that environment, the culture, the flexibility and alignment of your priorities, your values and your desires with the organizations, right? And people increasingly will probably also work in multiple organizations, right? The whole gig aspect of work is increasing, and people are already thinking about, I want to work 2 days in one company and maybe pursue something else in another place, right? And I think that's going to be getting accelerated even more, right? The whole gig economy is, I think, probably going to really get accelerated in the next coming years. So I think those are some of the priorities. I think when we are thinking about organizations, we'll have to probably rethink it to be more human and think about this from that aspect, as opposed to just looking at this from a business and customer, right? Is really have to become a lot more human to be relevant in this whole great reshuffle that's happening. I think that's what I'd like to share.
Fantastic. Thanks, Madhu and Pramad. My takeaway is very clearly organizations that are human, that care for their employees, provide them with opportunities to develop and acquire new skills, at the same time taking care of their well-being, are the ones who would come out successfully from this phenomenon of the Great Resignation. Lovely talking to you. Thanks for taking out your time from your busy schedules. Would love to continue these conversations going forward, and I'm sure the audience as well love this interaction. Thank you very much once again. Have a good day.
Thank you. Pleasure is mine.